Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Scorpio, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of September 2025. I hope you are well. I'm using the Tarot of the Divine for you today. Here it is. Before we begin, if the reading resonates with you and you would like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. That's via one of the links in the description box below. I think it's the first one now. I'm going to monkey about with stuff. That you're looking for the link that takes you to Selfie anyway. Alternatively, you can come over to Circle and join us over at the private community. There you can get access to all of the extended content for no extra cost to be on the membership fee. And if you choose to bump up a tier, you can come and participate in the live classes that we run over there in all sorts of modalities. It's not limited to just tarot, it's everything. So if that sounds like it might be of interest to you, you know what to do with that link. Scorpio, before I start pulling cards out for you, I want to give you a message that I got literally while I was sitting here. Now, some of you know I do a meditation. I connect with your energy before I start any reading whatsoever. And it's not very often that I'm given a visual message, but I definitely got one. I could tell immediately as I connected with your energy that you are somewhere very, very deep at the moment. And the visual that I got was of two towers and a path between them. Now, some of you who are more familiar with tarot will recognise some of the symbolism of that from the moon card, right? Definitely the two towers and the path leading between them. It didn't have wolves or dogs or crayfish or anything like that in the visual at all. But what I saw was you looking up, seeing these two towers, seeing this long road ahead of you and, you know, mountains in the distance. And then looking down, and the message was keep walking, right? And it felt very much like the size of the task that you have in front of you will overwhelm you if you keep looking at the big picture of it. What you need to do is start walking and keep walking. Put your head down, attend to a few of the details, which would be the things that are in front of you in the present moment, right? And just keep walking and trust that you are going to be on the right path. Now, that was very, very clear, and I had to give that to you before I started pulling any cards out whatsoever. So I've done that. So let's get some cards out. Now I have 3 cards for Scorpio, please. Lots of cards turning over. Whoa, okay, right. We've got the Hanged Man and we've got the Devil reversed. I have to say my goosebumps have been non-stop since I started telling you about the meditation and mayhap. Oh, we'll come back to that. What about current energy for Scorpio, please? Current energy for Scorpio. We have the Sun and we have the 5 of Cups. The 5 of Cups being, of course, a Scorpio card. You know, loosely we've got Pisces, we've got Capricorn, we've got Leo, we've got Scorpio. I'm not sure that the signs are particularly relevant at this point, but, you know. Anyway, what's coming towards Scorpio, please? Thank you. We've got 2 cards again. We have 10 of Cups and we have Death. Right. Now, Death is one of those cards that people consider to be very scary. I'm talking to Scorpios here, so probably a little less than most people. You know, Scorpios are innately attuned to the decay and the breakdown of things, right? And the Death card represents you, right? It's a Scorpio card, but it doesn't just talk about endings and breakdown and decay, although that is a very necessary part of new beginnings. It talks about transformations of state. So, you know, the ultimate transformation of state is to go from life to death, right? We haven't quite found a way to physically change from death to life, but no doubt at some point in human evolution that will become a thing. Technological evolution. We've all read books about what happens when that goes down. It's probably not a good idea, right? However, It can also represent transformations of state within ourselves, right? So emotional transformations, spiritual transformations, mental transformations, which are really quite significant. I feel like where you are at the moment, although we have the Sun card out here, there's something of an underworld kind of feeling about the journey that you're on, right? The image that I got was very moon-like, and what we've got here is very sun-like. And so there's opposite ends of the spectrum being employed here, but I wonder if it is the synthesis of the two that we are looking at for you at this present moment. So let's get some clarifiers out, and then we'll kind of, we'll launch into this. Tell me about the Hangman and the Devil reversed, please. Okay, we have the Ten of Pentacles and the Four of Pentacles, both of them on their side, indicating a degree of, what's the word that I would use? A degree of instability around Pentacles matters. But we also have the Ace of Wands showing up at the same time, right? So necessary breakdown. Tell me about the Sun and the Five of Cups, please. We have the Strength card. So we've got double Leo on the table. We've got the Chariot, and we have the Four of Swords. Tell me about the Ten of Cups and Death, please. Thank you. Nine of Swords, Temperance, and the Seven of Cups. At the bottom of this deck, we have the Ace of Swords. I'm trying to find some way to put it so you can see it. It's there. Not my card down there. Right, now I realise that it's a little bit of a clusterfuck here, and I'm sorry about that, but I'll try and arrange these so that you can see them more clearly. There is something very, very powerful going on here with you, Scorpio, this month. And, we've got a little bit of time before Scorpio season starts, but it's really not that far away. I mean, September is the last full month that we will have before we reach Scorpio season. And in that way, I am wondering if there is before the renewal of the Sun entering your sign, whether we're going through the last stage of something, right? Because there are a few cards on here that I think that for other signs they would find, shall we say, unpalatable. But there's a very conscious way in which you are navigating this process. Now, it feels big and almost like, how do you eat the elephant, right? One bite at a time and all that kind of thing. You're intuiting the size of the task in front of you. And you're also knowing not only how much work it will take, but what the possibility of loss is. Again, another thing that Scorpio is uniquely attuned to, right? But that shouldn't put you off what it is that you are doing. Particularly if, as we see here with the Ten of Cups, there is an aspect of this that affects a larger group of people than just you. In fact, I think if what you're doing doesn't involve a group of people, say for example your family or your friendship group or some aspect of your community, then possibly you're not thinking big enough on this. You have double aces on the table, which is very powerful indeed, and we have some idea of thoughts and actions getting to a place where they may well align, or they need to align, let's put it that way, because you are perceiving a new level of truth in things, and that's very important for a Scorpio. Scorpios are obsessed with truth, I think, and the pursuit of the truth. But the Ace of Swords also for me represents an entirely new way of seeing reality. Now, reality is a word that we bandy around a lot, probably without necessarily having a hard and fast definition for it. But that notwithstanding, I think we can all recognise that we are living on very, very different levels of reality. It shocks me sometimes when I talk to people and their lived experience, I fucking hate that term, right? But their experience of what the world is very, very different to mine. And it's like, well, how can you have so many competing views on this? And And it's because it's breaking down, right? Consensus reality went out of the window some time ago. It will return, but it won't return before before we've done the work and people are starting to view things in broadly the same way. And when you combine this with this huge shift in consciousness that has happened this year, still very much in motion, but I think people who are sensitive have been really at the sharp edge of this. Then we've got everything turning upside down, everything disordered, everything feeling a little bit chaotic. Nevertheless, we are called to keep walking, right? That's what's happening here. So let's start off over here, because this is quite interesting. This is your recent past, right? And when I say recent past, we could be talking about 6 weeks ago. We could be talking about this morning when we got out of bed. You have double major arcana, which is kind of a big deal, right? Because the major arcana function somewhat as the universal forces that are at play on our lives, right? Nudging, creating interesting coincidences, making us pick one thing over another, or forcing us into a position where we pick one thing over another, right? Which leads us on a very strange path that we didn't anticipate that we were going. But then there's also that kind of underlying intelligence about the experiences that we've had, right? Conversely, the minor arcana cards are our responses to that, right? It's putting action in our wheelhouse, whether it's around how we feel, how we think, what we do, so on and so forth, right? So to have this big energy here in your recent past is a lot. And it says to me that you have completely changed your perspective on something. Now, the energy of the Hanged Man is often given to be surrender. It's an active submission to something, voluntary submission to a state of discomfort, principally so that we can see the world in a different perspective. It's incredibly passive. Like, there is no action outside of oneself when we've got a Hanged Man energy, other than completely inverting our view. Now, what's quite interesting is that the next card along we have is the Devil, a card that also deals in a strange sort of way with inversions. We talk about the work of the Devil being the inversion of everything that is good, right? The exact opposite. We look at polarities and say, the light and the dark, and the positive and the negative, the good TM and the bad TM. Although often, well, yeah, there's a thing, right? So we have two cards that are both talking about inverting something. And there's a very powerful thing that seems to have happened with you recently, where you have voluntarily, and I like I said, I get the feeling of a very, very strong underworld transit that you are involved in at the moment, right? But transit makes it sound astrological, and I don't know if it necessarily is, but it's a journey of some sort, even though I feel like that word is overused a lot as well. Where you have changed the way that you see things so significantly that you've performed, I guess, a kind of 180 on yourself, and what previously did frighten you, what previously had you feeling stuck, trapped, unable to move, perhaps stuck in a rather negative energy, has been also completely inverted, right? The King of Inversions has inverted, in fact, in the face of what you have chosen to see differently. Now, one might say the act of seeing things differently is a passive thing, but you chose to put yourself on the tree. You chose to look at things from a different direction, right? You chose to submit to the energy that was kind of pushing you to do that thing. And so the fear around something for you has gone now. It's been eradicated, and as such, it seems to have thrown a lot of other things into a state of disarray. Why do I say that? Well, because the Pentacles cards, as you would expect for a suit that represents earth energy, tend to be very planted. They tend to be very rooted. And in fact, what we've got is a foundational level card here with the Four of Pentacles, leading to a particular result. Ten of Pentacles. Now, the Ten of Pentacles can cover things like your business, your financial arrangements. It can talk about inheritance too. We can be talking about family. We can be talking about business. Did I say that already? Yeah, I probably did. It's got that heritage and legacy aspect to it, but then it also has the idea of those things that are so well established that they will continue in perpetuity, right? Both of them having a very fixed feeling about them. One needs to be fixed to create the other, right? But the Four of Pentacles isn't necessarily a terribly helpful energy when we are trying to boost and flow into stuff, right? It would kind of sit on the opposite end of the scale from the Hanged Man, which is very passive, no resistance whatsoever, allow things to flow as they will. Whereas the energy of the Four of Pentacles is much more like, no, this is important, this needs to stay. I wonder if part of what you're seeing differently is where in your life you have been resisting change, you have been resisting even uprooting yourself potentially, removing excuse me, removing the security and the stability that we would associate with the Ten of Pentacles, right? So it could well be, when we're seeing these cards on the side, they're not inverted. Interesting that I keep coming back to that word, right? We're not dealing with the opposite energy. We're dealing with it not really vibing in the way that it used to. Sometimes we can see these sideways cards as indicating energies that are kind of shuffling into position, ready to be activated. I don't feel that with you. I feel like it's actually ready to be cast out, right? Leaning into that Scorpio nature, meaning like, I recognize that this now needs to degrade, it needs to decay, because I'm trying to make space for something new. So we've got a change of position in terms of what you think is important, because the Four of Pentacles does talk to me about that, right? It's your priorities and all that kind of thing, right? But it's what you have, it's your resources, it's the foundation on which your entire life is built. And sometimes it is that clamping down and, no, I am not letting go of this thing. Now, if it got to the point where it was entirely reversed, then we would say that whole process was done and dusted, but it's not. It's just it's lacking substance now. That would be the way to put it, right? And so it is for the Ten of Pentacles too, right? There's things don't have quite as much substance as I thought they did. This doesn't mean the same to me as it used to. So if you wanted to look at it from a very flat 3D point of view, you could say, well, actually, I've realised it's time for me to move, right? Whether it's to leave the particular house that I'm in, the particular neighbourhood, the particular town, state, country, maybe, the familiarity. And I think that these two cards together would speak very strongly to a clamping down on things that were familiar and safe and stable, is now being replaced with notions that we could do things differently compared to how we have been doing them, right? The Ace of Wands is a very, very powerful card of new actions, but it's also about passions and creativity and all that kind of thing, right? But ultimately, it's the spark that initiates some sort of action moving forwards. You combine this with the Ace of Swords, which is in the upright, and we have an entirely new way of seeing the world that is going to cause a change in the way that you do things. But first, some things that are keeping you stuck must go, right? The greatest gift of the Devil reversed is the realization that at any given moment you can choose to do something different. And it is in the choosing, it is in the conscious assessment of situations that you realize that you are not stuck and trapped in all these sorts of things that we tend to associate with the devil, right? Because the feeding of the devil and the strength of the devil comes from the subconscious, right? It comes from the way in which we kind of don't look at a thing because we're afraid of it, right? And I would say for most people, being afraid of their own power is something that features pretty highly on things, because with great power comes great responsibility, and a lot of people don't want to take that. I think that, Scorpio, you do. Want to is probably a strong phrase on that one, right? I'm not sure you do want to, but you accept that this is your path, and you accept that the next steps, like in the meditation, right, it was very much like journey of 1,000 miles must begin with a single step. Get the fucking ball rolling, Scorpio. Like, don't allow yourself to stare at the big picture and then, kind of look at yourself and go, how the fuck am I supposed to do this? It's like, just start, just move, right? So then we come to your current energy, and we've got the sun, like I said, very conscious, and we've got the Five of Cups, and then we have more major arcana showing up here under the surface. Now, I think that this would suggest to me that, a lot of the big movements are happening for you quite literally beneath the surface, right? It's internal shifts, internal changes. Whatever it was that's going on here, to some extent, it can be seen by other people, right? Perhaps you're not fighting where you would normally fight. You're not resisting where you would usually resist, right? That can be perceived by other people, and there's a knock-on effect in terms of how you see reality. And I mean, I haven't even mentioned the Nine of Cups, but I feel like the Nine of Cups is featuring strongly in here in terms of you aligning with what your highest goals, hope, dreams, aspirations, tasks actually is, right? And the level of emotional maturity and management that is going into the renegotiation of reality at a fundamental level for you, right? And so it is that the Strength and the Chariot card are showing up here beneath the surface. And I'm really, really pleased to see the Four of Swords showing up in addition to this, because the Four of Swords says that there is a level of mental peace with this, right? There is a level of acceptance that is going on. I'm kind of pointing broadly at the Hanged Man here, right? Because you're not fighting this. I mean, to some extent, Scorpio, and I wonder if this is an interesting point, like, it's almost like you're not really thinking about it. This one seems to be leading very much from the heart space with you. It seems to be an emotional proposition first and a mental consideration afterwards. Logistics and stuff like that is always going to be the preserve of the sword suit, right? It's the sort of thing that needs active thinking about. But for now, the more important thing is that the shifts and changes internally are taking place such that you are willing to start the process, to start the ball rolling, to keep walking, right? Now, I said that it was quite interesting that these two cards had come up together. I mean, even on the cards, we've got the sun and the moon showing up, right? This sense of an alignment between thoughts and the corresponding actions that come from it, right? The view of reality versus the change that you want to make in the material, right? There's a fusion, there's a synthesis here, I think, of an idea of you very consciously putting yourself through an underworld process, leading to growth in you, right? Becoming bigger. The Strength card for me is all about personal development and how we don't seek to minimize our problems or our issues or our challenges, but we recognize that we must grow to meet them, and in growing to meet them, we make ourselves bigger than the problems. That's the Strength card in a nutshell for me. And the Chariot card, there's a lot that needs to be balanced in order for the Chariot card to move forwards. Now, although this is a card of the light, if you will put it that way, and it's traditionally associated with things like determination and victory and success and all those kind of things that feel a bit weird, I think, to talk about in 2025. Excuse me. Because it represents shadow work for me. By no means is this a common interpretation for the Chariot, right? But to me personally, it speaks of shadow work because we have the balancing of polarities, and that is what shadow work is, right? It's going in and retrieving things from your shadow that you have cast away. It's creating the balance between the polarities again, the visible, the invisible, the light, the dark, the positive, the negative, the good, the bad, right? Because we all chuck stuff in there because we think that it's bad. When we have a full complement of resources to work with, which is to say the skill set that has been given to us by God, Source, the universe, Creator, however you want to term it, when we have accepted all of those things into ourselves and we found a way to balance it internally, then and only then are we capable of moving forwards. The charioteer in this case is almost like the conscious mind creating the he's not creating the balance between the two, but he's in charge of working out what thing is needed here and there and wherever, right? So the Sun card for me is representing a conscious energy that seems to be the external manifestation of your charioteer. It's like, I haven't been sucked into the underworld. I haven't been dragged against my will. We know that you've gone there willingly on your own, right? Voluntary submission to the process. You haven't resisted any aspect of it. And now that you are there, it's almost like you are casting a light of illumination around everything. Now, this Five of Cups, instability in emotions. I mean, there's part of me that says that despite the fact that it is a Scorpio card, I'm not entirely sure that it is representing an energy that belongs to you. I'm going to pull out another card for that. Tell me about the Five of Cups. We have the Chariot card showing up again. And even the way that these two cards are together, it seems like you are on the river that will lead you to this character right here who is stuck. And this is where it becomes interesting and very layered, right? Because some aspect of this is you, where you know what you're looking for. The Chariot is taking you there forcefully. And I feel like I want to start talking about ego here, because there's some part of your ego that you are currently battling against and winning. And I think it is the ego part of you that says that you're not special, you're not unique. Why do you think that you would be able to do X, Y, and Z? The cards are here are saying, like, it is your refusal to accept what has been laid before you that is functioning as the expression of your ego at this time. A little bit of ego is necessary, right? It's what keeps you alive. But you going looking for this Five of Cups, the representation of your ego that's saying, I don't want to do something this big, I can't do something this big, I'm a bit afraid of my own power, right? But it's against a backdrop of seeing people who are unable to cope. I mean, there may well be very many expressions of this as you look around, people dealing with grief on different levels about different things. I mean, remember, any loss whatsoever will have a resultant grieving process that goes with it, right? So we're not just talking about bereavements. We can also be talking about the loss of job. We can be talking about the loss of a marriage, right, through divorce or something like that. These are very obvious representations of this. But I think there is an unresolved grief within people collectively at this time that really started coming to the surface in 2020 and has not to any satisfactory degree been addressed, I don't think. And so as people are getting squeezed, as life is becoming more difficult, as everything is becoming more chaotic, it's becoming more and more difficult for people to hide away from their Five of Cups stasis, right? Where the emotions just haven't fucking moved. I mean, people may be leading with very damaged emotions. There's a backdrop here that is being spread out behind you, and it's going, look at what's going on in the world here. You have a path to follow because you have a part to play in fixing this, even if that part to play isn't of teacher leader guide. I know I'm bashing on about this all the time, but I mean, that message, I don't think it can be said often enough. But even if you are not positioning yourself as a teacher or a leader or a guide, your ability to be able to lead by example is your strength at the moment, I think. Get your ducks in order, get your shit aligned, and then start walking. Like, no additional kind of thinking or pontificating or cogitating or anything like that is actually required here from you. It's like, start the process. So whether you are thinking about moving, or whether you're thinking about starting a business or ending a business, whether whatever way you are looking at in shaking up your life, and I would say almost across the board, every Scorpio is looking at some aspect of their life that has been fixed and rigid, such as it has represented security and safety for them. Whether there is an external aspect to that manifestation of that, like your house, your business, so on, or it's where you are seated within yourself, right? What represents security and stability to you now being something that is very internal, right? So it doesn't matter what shit gets thrown at you in the 3D. It's kind of like, well, I know where my security is. I know where my foundation is. I know what is important to me, these sorts of things. It's trusting the process of growth that is going on for you here at this time. And I know that you do, because you've submitted to it voluntarily, right? So then when we come into September, we've got the Ten of Cups and we have the Death card. Now, the Ten of Cups is a card that often people really like to see. In their mind, it is the happily ever after card. Now, hi Scorpio, I have an 8th house stellium, right? So I feel like I can speak with some authority to this the Scorpio wisdom that says nothing is forever, nothing lasts. And I think with the Ten of Cups, we've got the potential for enormous suffering. Now, you might say in the Ten of Swords, for example, or even the Ten of Wands, right? We have the reality of great suffering, but it's very obvious. It's right there. You can see it. You can put yourself in that position, and not too much in the Ten of Swords, but you know what I mean, right? You can extrapolate the level of suffering that is going on in that moment for someone. The Ten of Cups holds the capacity for equal to, if not more, suffering. It just hasn't been quite realised yet. And the reason for that is located in the fact that this is the 10. And when we have a 10, we are talking about endings. We are talking about something having reached its natural conclusion, and now it must be, we must leave it behind and start something else again, right? Now, this message is intensified by the presence of the Death card here. Now, if I was reading for any other sign, I'd be like, ooh, right, okay, something about your situation, your community, your family, it's changing shape, it's transforming to a different state. And maybe it is that you are going to be leaving that behind, right? That which has represented emotional security, emotional stability for you, right? The community feel, there was a time when I was in my teens where I could walk into town from the village that I lived in, and I could walk into any pub, and there were a lot of pubs, any pub, and I would bump into somebody that I knew. That was just a fact. It was a given, and it didn't matter what time of day I walked into it. I would meet somebody that I knew. And then I uprooted my entire life at the age of 20 to move my son up to somewhere where I thought he had a better chance of having a childhood. So I ripped myself away from everything that I knew. Didn't rip him away from everything that he knew. He was like 1 at the time, And there were certain aspects of that experience that I didn't expect to hit me so hard. It was the absolute unfamiliarity with the circumstances that I found myself in, right? I moved to Yorkshire. All the shops shut on a Wednesday afternoon. Like, what the fuck? I'd come from a large town where shops did not shut on a Wednesday, but this was a this was a Yorkshire thing. All the shops shut on a Wednesday afternoon. Nothing was open. So I got caught out by that a few times. A few weeks on the trot before I adjusted to it. But walking into a shop, walking anywhere where there were people, and not knowing a single fucking person. And that same situation was replicated then when I moved from Yorkshire up to Newcastle, because I had the added language barrier, which I was not anticipating when I moved up to Newcastle. You know, it's like walking around a foreign country, because the accent was so strong. I couldn't actually understand anything that anybody was saying to me. About 6 months to get my ear in so that I could understand it. I'd walk down the street and, you know, you naturally tune into conversations. Couldn't understand a word of it, what anybody was fucking talking about. I was like, they are not speaking English. They were speaking English, just with a very, very strong Geordie accent. At each moment, I made the shift because it was the right thing to do for the family, but there were unintended consequences that left me feeling very alienated, very confused, and very much out of my depth. I feel like in the examples that I've given there, I've embraced the Ten of Cups, but recognised that there were consequences to that. The suffering comes when you don't, when you try and stay where you are. Now, each time, left behind family, left behind friends, started again, started anew, as each stage of life required it. Now, when I said at the beginning that I thought that there was an aspect to whatever it is that you're doing right here that involves more than just you, I am talking about more than just you and your spouse, or you and, you know, a child, a couple of children, whatever, right? The Ten of Cups is, in its broadest sense, the collective. So that can be the entire family. It can be the entire friendship group. It can be your community. It can be fucking humanity, if you want to look at it like that, right? And I think depending on who you are and what you're into, each one of those could apply quite strongly. So whether it's about leaving people behind, or whether it's actively transforming your community, whether you're taking your community with you or not, right? So not moving away from them, but actually going, right, we need to overhaul this. September augurs great change. Now, additionally, because the Death card represents you to me feel like the agent of that change. And I think that this is the first step. This is the keep walking message that we got right at the beginning. Because I think you can see the scale of what you're about to take on. And I think to some extent or another, you're also aware of the capacity for the unintended consequence. And I think at this point, if you could clone yourself, you probably would. Because then at least you could make yourself a small army to take on whatever it is that you are looking to change. But the message is very strong. You don't need an army, you just need you, Scorpio. Right? This Nine of Swords, it's one of the unpleasant cards in the tarot. It's one that nobody really wants to see, and it is associated with things like, worry, concern, anxiety, insomnia, all that kind of thing, right? And it can cover everything, actually, right up to mental illness. I don't think that is a relevant interpretation here, right? But when you drill down to the core of what this sword is actually about, it is all about perception. Perception creates reality, not the other way around. And so when I was talking earlier about how many people could be living so many different kinds of realities right now and how consensus reality has broken down, it's not that one is any more true than the other, because I think that's a difficult state to achieve. I mean, if you look into quantum physics, there's a chap who's been on the podcast circuit for the last couple of years, maybe 3 years now, actually, who has this theory that reality is essentially an overlay. Excuse me, is an overlay for us. Because our minds would literally fucking explode if we tried to take everything in. And I can see the sense in that, right? So everybody has a little piece of the puzzle. But when it comes to our own state, if our particular view of reality is giving us anxiety, it's giving us insomnia, it's stopping us from moving, then there's something in it that needs to be changed, right? Because truth is the highest vibration of all, for sure. And things that are done in joy and love feel much better than those things that are done in agony and pain, right? And sometimes we need to shift that bit of us that is viewing something as a cause of suffering or a cause of pain. Even if that's to shift it in our head to an idea of a teaching moment, right? I am experiencing a teaching moment and I will be grateful for this at some point in the future. The concern and the worry that you have, I think, is 9 of Swords. And that's why the message is to put your head down and start walking. But I think it's talking more generally to what is going on outside of you with people. There's a piece of the puzzle that you have, Scorpio, that other people don't. And for some reason, you are being highlighted as a change agent this month. I mean, I think you always are anyway. Certainly speaking as a Leo, my interactions with Scorpio always change me, but Scorpio squares Leo, right? So it's always forcing some sort of change. But the message here for you, we have balance with Temperance. We have balance with the Chariot showing up twice here, right? You've balanced the internals. Now it's time to start balancing things on a bigger basis, right? Because what we've got in this card is almost like the other side of the path, right? Instead of the mountains being in front of you, the mountains are behind you, and notice that they are crowned, right? Something has been achieved here, something has been bested, it's been mastered. Lessons have been mastered, experiences have been understood correctly, and there is a long walk here to this point where you can be grounded in your emotions. You can pour from one cup into the other, right? There's a divine there's divine orchestration kind of element to this card. It is healing. You walked through the flames, you survived. You walked through the mountains, you survived, right? You're being asked to do it again, and you will survive again. Even if you don't know where you're going, even if you can't really perceive the extent of what you are being asked to do, nevertheless you are being asked to do it. But as this relates to other people, the 9 of Swords, the Temperance card, and the 7 of Cups says everybody is in a state of disarray, and they are looking for people who can bring that temperate energy to them. Whether you like it or not, Scorpio, you have been selected, lucky you, you're today's winner, to be part of that movement that starts to shape people's minds and hearts, actually. So, I mean, we started off with considering the possibility that maybe you might be moving, right? Flat 3D interpretation, entirely possible. And you could be moving job as much as moving house, right? But I think the shift in consciousness that's happened with you is moving from material concerns to spiritual concerns, and you are ready to start walking the path. And more than that, you're ready to start walking the path and taking people with you, right? Now you're going to be in front, but the other people won't be very far behind. But at this moment, like, you're the one who's drawing back the veil, Scorpio. You're the one who's pointing to where the first move starts. We're not asking you to walk this path alone, because I don't think that you will, although there is something kind of solitary about the position that you're holding. But it's realize how many people are behind you, literally or metaphorically, take your pick, who are looking for someone like you with the skills that you have to take them forward. People find a lot of stability and security in the nature of the Ten of Cups and the Ten of Pentacles, right? And I feel like to some extent you are knocking it back to people and going, this isn't working, this is ending now, this needs to change. We need to work on ourselves, we need to work on our understanding of our own complex emotional processes, complex emotional needs, desires, wants, goals, and all that kind of thing. Because in order to have the collective harmony, people themselves need to turn up in a harmonized state. You've been doing that for yourself for a long time, Scorpio, but I think it's time that other people are introduced to this concept. You are the bridge between worlds. So whether you're leading by example within your family group or your social, your social group, or people at work or whatever, it's not that you're stepping forward because you know best. It's like everybody's kind of aligning behind you and going, well, Scorpio seems to know where it's at. In times of crisis, people look for those who are unflappable in the face of it. When it comes to an underworld journey, I'm always going to pick Scorpio as someone to accompany me, because there's nothing about that scares them, particularly not now. You've been through the fire, still in the fire somewhat, or the cold and dark, however you see the underworld, right? There's nothing that gives people more confidence than seeing somebody who has walked a path that they are on, who has emerged out the other side, wise, confident, humble, powerful. And you are all of those things, Scorpio. So I don't think that you're necessarily chasing limelight or anything like that on this. I really don't think that. And it's almost less about how you see yourself than the way that everybody else sees you. And if people around you see something in you and they are selecting you to be in charge, or they're just automatically kind of aligning themselves behind you to let you make the decisions and you be the guide on this, it would be an ego position for you to refuse. Right? It would be your own Five of Cups that was standing in the way, and we know that you're working through that, so that's not an issue anymore. This is really, really interesting, Scorpio. It's a big month. It's a really, really big month, and it feels like you are quite literally creating space. You're doing your job, you're doing your bit. And when your season comes in October, I wonder if we're going to see that Ace of Wands in the upright. Right? Everything's balanced, everything's aligned, and now we've got big action going on. I think that's entirely possible. Wow. Right, I'm going to go to the extended now. You're very welcome to join me over there. If you would like to do so, you can do that on Selfie, you can do that on Circle. Please do know that I would be delighted to see you in either place. If that's not for you, that's absolutely fine. And I know you don't like being seen, Scorpio, but I see you. I see what you're doing, And it's good. It's really, really good. You have no idea how important you are. 7 words that changed my life that I read in a book once. Proceed as if you are needed. Because you are, Scorpio. Right? Know that I love you all very, very much. And I'll see you soon.